Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Brown Jutras. My pronouns are she, her. And today you are joining us for the Advocacy 101 training. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about if you've never done advocacy before, where do you start? What do you need to know? How do you get in there and really start working and doing effective work? That is the most important part, is that we want to talk about effective advocacy today. So let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit about myself. I hate these things, having to read about myself, but I'll tell you a little bit. So my background is in community and electoral organizing. My most recent work has been doing regional organizing for the Biden-Harris presidential campaign, as well as working in the historic state runoffs in Georgia. Amazing time, stressful, but I loved every bit of it. My passion, of course, is social justice, and that's what's kind of driven me to do this community work. Started out as an activist, an advocate on the ground in my community, having conversations about social issues, and then really just realized that I wanted to do more. I knew that I believed so strongly in organizing, and I knew I believed so strongly in my community, but I wanted to understand, how can I do this work? And then once I understood fully how I can effectively do this work, I realized that there weren't very many resources out there for how to be an effective organizer, how to effectively advocate, unless you were a part of some membership or some group. And so that's why I'm here today. I want to help you all out. I want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to have resources that maybe some folks didn't have, but also to give you a platform to begin your advocacy work on. So I'm really excited to share this time with you. And then at the bottom, you can see my email. It's jbyorganizing@gmail.com. You can at any time feel free to send me an email. I'll make sure to be checking for y'all. But yeah, like I said, let's go ahead and get started. So what are our goals? Okay, so we're going to be developing the confidence and skills to communicate with elected officials about issues that are most important to you, but especially most important to your community. We're also going to talk about how to prepare your talking points and your personal story. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into your personal story. I'm sure you've heard a lot of conversations and a lot of stories about how your personal story really and truly helps your advocacy. But we're going to dig deeper and find out how you can build that personal story and your talking points to be effective in your conversations. And then lastly, the art of making a hard ask. Every organizer and advocate knows that you're not doing your job until you've made that hard ask. And I want to make sure that you know exactly how to do that and how to and when to. So yeah, I'm so excited. Come on, let's do it.
Jasmine, can we pause for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have your AirPods in or headphones?
I don't. Should I?
Yes. Your your audio's coming in a little choppy.
Okay.
All right, so the goals, let's talk about what we're going to learn today. So first, we're going to learn to develop the confidence and the skills to communicate with elected officials about issues that are most important to you, but most importantly, we're going to talk about issues that are most important to your community. And then we'll also decide, how to prepare your talking points in your personal story. I know some folks have probably heard about how your personal story really can highlight and enhance your conversations when you're trying to get across a point that you're very passionate about. But we're going to talk about how we can connect that story and also how you can prepare your talking points to make sure that you are getting your point across to who you're having this conversation with. And then lastly, the art of making a hard ask. Every organizer and every advocate in this work knows that you have not done your job until you have learned how to make the proper hard ask and when to. So we're going to talk about all three of those things and some more, but let's go ahead and kick it off. First, I have a question for you. Have you ever met with a legislator or a city official? Now, if you did, what was the outcome of that conversation? I've heard all types of things from good to bad, and be honest with yourself because it's going to be just you. I want you to think about this question, and then I want you to pause the video because I want you to write down in a brief answer. It doesn't have to be a long page or anything. Just write down briefly what it is that happened. And I want you to save that for at the end of the training, and we're going to reflect on that. First, you can't do advocacy, can't talk to elected officials until you have the information, their information to contact them, right? So I know that we are all from all over the country. And so I wanted to make sure we have a way for you to look up every elected official that represents you, and then be able to have a contact to each of them. So the Common Cause, it is a nonprofit. They have amazing resources, but one of the resources that they do have is called Find Your Representative. And so the link right here that I have on this page, when you click on it, it will pull up to the left of the screen. You'll see what looks like this. And you just put in your address, and y'all, this will show you every person that represents you, from the president all the way down to your city councilor, and in between. I'm talking elected, your president, your state rep, your senator, your US congressperson, your sheriff, commissioners, city councilors, mayors, all of them will pull up, and you have access to their phone number and email. So I want you to take time before you even move forward to make sure you look this up. I want to make sure that you know who to talk to. So go research them, and you can use the link below. All right, let's jump into the nitty gritty. Okay, so understanding the state legislative process. I want to be clear that today we're going to be talking about the state legislative process. And I also want to preface this conversation with saying that every state is different. I live in Oklahoma, and so a lot of what I've written today is the state legislative process for Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's legislative process is similar to other states. But so please take this information. It is very general process as information, but make sure you take time to look up exactly what the process is in your state. This will just give you a general idea. The legislative process. So the process starts with the introduction of a bill. The bill has to be written. So the bill is the idea or the legislation. So it has to be written. And then after the bill is written, it goes to a committee. It goes to a committee of legislators who review this bill. They're looking for anything from grammatical errors to even their opinion. Maybe they don't agree with something that's in the bill and they want to take it out. But either way, a bill cannot go to the Senate or the House until the committee decides, or if they even decide to let it leave the committee. There is an option for it not to leave the committee as well. But let's say it does leave, then it goes to the floor for debate, which just means it goes to the House or the Senate, depending where the bill was written. And then the legislators, they debate it. They have conversation. They decide whether they like it or they don't like it. They submit amendments and all different types of things to make sure this bill is in the perfect condition to have a vote upon it. And then it goes to a vote. So to continue this, imagine, let's say there is a yes vote on a bill. Then it goes to the next chamber. For example, if it is in the House of Representatives and there is a yes vote in the House of Representatives, then that piece of legislation or that bill now goes over to the Senate to be reviewed. Because you have to remember that a law cannot be passed until it is reviewed and approved by both chambers and then signed by the governor, which we'll continue with in just a little bit. But what if there's a no vote? They really don't like this bill. They've decided that, you know, this is not something we want to pass out of our state. Then the bill has no action and it dies. This bill cannot be reintroduced until the next legislative session. Now, just a reminder that every state has a different process for when they have a legislative session. For example, Oklahoma has a legislative session every year, but it only lasts a couple months, and it is in the beginning of the year. It's normally like about February to April. However, other states have different rules, so it's very important that you take the time to understand when your legislative session is happening. So let's head back up to yes vote. It made it, let's pretend it came out of the House of Representatives and now it's in the Senate. So it goes to the Senate and it gets a yes vote. What happens next? It has to be signed by the governor. So the House has signed it. The House has said yes. The Senate has said yes. Maybe they've added some amendments here and there. It's on the way to the governor to be signed into law or not. Now, what if there is a no vote? A no vote is the same as a no vote in the past chamber. This bill does die. It cannot go any further, and it cannot be reintroduced into the next legislative session. So now in this part, I want to talk about the local legislative process, because this is an Advocacy 101 training. I want to make sure that you have the tools to talk to state elected officials and local elected officials, because I mean, my preference honestly is that local politics are the most important politics because that's the closest to you, but I'm biased. But I want to make sure, like I said, you have the tools to talk to both, okay? So on a local level, bills are normally referenced as resolutions and not not a bill. And so just keep that in mind. That's why you're seeing a change in terms. So let's say at your local city council, there has been a resolution that has been proposed, and there's a yes vote by the entire city council. What happens next? It has next steps. Let's say that there's a no vote. A no vote means that the resolution does die. Let's go back up to yes. So the next steps. 1, it either goes to the corresponding board or the commission to return with a recommendation, right? Or it's signed. 5 seconds, Timber.
You want me to pause the recording?
No, I'm just going to go back a couple really quick. Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. I had a notification for an update pop up.
No worries.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back up to the yes vote. There are next steps. The next step would be one or two things. One is that it goes to the corresponding board or commission, and then it's to be returned for a commission. So like in the state legislature, a bill would go to a committee. Then, well, in this situation, after the bill is passed, it would then go to a committee or a board that the topic relates to, and they could return with a recommendation on what the city should do with this idea or with this resolution. Or it can get signed into a city ordinance by the mayor. So just keep these facts in mind. And I want to preface that this resolution process, the making of the bill is very similar to the legislative process, where a bill is drafted, it is reviewed, and then it's brought to the body. And then it's up to a vote. So this is the process after the resolution has been drafted. So let's move on to our next section for the evening. So constituents versus elected officials and what you should know. These interactions can be intimidating, but they don't have to be. Elected officials are not celebrities, okay? They are not celebrities. They are just human beings who put in the work and were able to get elected. But now they listen to you as a constituent. So keeping that in mind when you're having a conversation with elected official can help to ease the nervousness maybe of talking to an elected official. But remember, they're not celebrities. It's their job to listen to you. It's their job to have conversations with you. But I want to make sure you have the tools to be able to control the narrative, control the conversation, and make sure that you get your point across at the end of the day. So what do you have to do first? You got to request a meeting if you want to talk with them. While they are elected officials and it is their job to talk with you and to have conversations with you, they are very busy people. So make sure that you are doing your side of the job and make sure you're requesting that meeting and not just kind of walking in their office. Well, sometimes it's acceptable if you're just there, that's fine. But it's always best to schedule a meeting. So let's follow these steps to make sure that you schedule a meeting and follow through. So step 1 is that you need to call the office of the official or send a kindly worded email. Either one is fine. But make sure in that letter or in your conversation on the phone, you include a date, a time, and a location that you are choosing. It's best that you set the date and time than to kind of wait for them to dig through their calendar to figure it out. Just send them a couple options, send 2 or 3 options for a date or time, just to make sure that they have time on their calendar for that. Step 2. So while things are opening up again, I want everyone to still remember that we are still in a pandemic. And so you need to make sure you're offering an in-person or virtual option. It is nice to have an in-person meeting, but only do so if it's safe for both parties, safe and comfortable for both parties. We don't want to force an in-person meeting on somebody if they're not prepared to do so. Now, step 3, set your calendar, y'all. The last thing you want to do is miss a meeting. Do not do that. Don't be that person. So make sure you set your calendar so you don't miss it. And you set a calendar and invite the legislator on that calendar invite. Make sure they get that invite to their calendar. But chances are once you set that date, their legislative assistant or their office assistant will send you an email back with confirmation with an invite. But if they don't, make sure you send that invite to them so they also know that you are ready to meet them. And then lastly, prepare your talking points. And we'll talk more about how to prepare your talking points, but know what you're going to be talking about when you have this meeting. Are you going to be talking about healthcare? Are you going to be talking about forgiving student loans? What are we going to be talking about, right? So make sure you know what the topic is. And it's even helpful to put it in the letter and letting them know ahead of time what you'll be talking about. That sometimes is a little bit more helpful for the legislator to know. Maybe they want to research before going into the conversation the same way you're going to. Now, this may seem a little extra, right? Setting the meeting flow, but it is really important because when you're entering a meeting with an elected official, about something that you truly care about and you want to make sure that you are able to get everything off your chest that you want to, you have to set the meeting flow. You have to set the standard of what this conversation looks like. That way you can ensure that what you want to talk about is talked about, right? So this is kind of a timeline of what this meeting should look like. So start with introductions. Introduce yourself, tell them who you are, your name, where you're from, your pronouns. And then, maybe talk about what do you care about? What are some things that are really important, really close to you? Maybe you'll find some things that you have in common with that legislator or with that elected official. And then who are you as a person? Set that tone now so that the elected official knows how to interact with you. And then next, you're going to state the problem. So you're going to start with telling them who you are, and you're just going to jump right into it. You're going to let them know what brought you here. Maybe it was an issue, or maybe it was a specific bill that maybe they introduced, or a resolution that they introduced that you want to talk with them about. And then let's talk about how does this problem impact you and your community. That's not on the slide, but let's make sure that we are including you're including that this law or this issue impacts you, but it also impacts other people who live in their district or who they represent, and they need to know that. Then connecting your story. This issue impacts me personally because that personal touch is really going to connect that elected official to why you're speaking with them today. And next, you're going to offer a solution. You can't go into a conversation, state a problem, and expect this person to just give you a solution, right? You should go in looking at how can we fix this problem? What is your idea of how we can fix this problem? How has another state or another elected official fixed this problem? And then maybe you could even offer a bill that you may be lobbying for, if that's applicable, of course. Sometimes if you are going in about an issue, maybe it's healthcare, there may be a law or a bill that is in the process during this legislative session coming up. Maybe there's a bill that's already in process that's been written and it's planning to be introduced. You could close it out and say, hey, you could really help by solving this problem if you would just support HB 1001. And then that's another way you can connect them. And then lastly, like I said in the beginning, if you do not make that hard ask, you didn't do your job. At the end of every conversation, you ask for an action step. In this case, you're going to do it in the form of a hard ask. You're going to say, can I count on you to support HB 1001. Now, a bad example of a hard ask would be, let's see. So do you think maybe you could look into HB 1001? I think you might like it. That would be that would not be a hard ask. That would be a soft ask. You want to make sure you're using you want to use words that don't allow for anything but a yes or a no. So you say, can I count on you? Will you commit to? So using very hard words that put them in a corner where they can't make excuses. It's either a yes or a no. And you leave it with that. You leave that action item with them. So let's talk about preparing your talking points. Your talking points will ensure, we talked about this a little bit ago, but they'll ensure the effectiveness of your message. Because if you go in there and you don't prepare your talking points and you just go and you ramble on, then you're not getting your message across. You're not talking about what you came to talk about, or maybe you touched on it, but maybe that legislator now is going to be confused. Really, did they want to talk about healthcare and student loans, or did they just want to tell me about who they were? Stick to your talking points. Get off of that introduction and get right into it. It's okay to have, friendly, small conversation in the beginning, but as soon as you can get to it, get to those talking points so that the elected official knows that you mean business. So to craft your message, you need to first organize your ideas before you go. Don't do it in the meeting. Don't do it 5 minutes before. Prepare this. You're going to make some time. You'll have some time before the meeting. Sit down, organize your ideas on paper, on whiteboard, whatever resources you have to you. Organize them on paper. Next, you're going to provide a message with discipline. Okay, that with discipline part is real important because we know elected officials can really just irk that last nerve sometime. And it's going to be really hard sometimes to stay on task. But the goal is to stay disciplined with your message. I need you to forgive student loans. That is the message, and stick to it. Now, step 3, repeat your message. Talk a little bit, student loans. Talk a little more, student loans. Always bringing that back so that they know exactly what you meant to come here for today. And then lastly, include that call to action if it's appropriate. But I'm going to say it's always appropriate. There's always something that your elected official can do for you or with you. So look for ways, even if it's not something that you needed from them. Maybe you just wanted to get to know this person. Maybe this wasn't a meeting to ask them of something. Maybe you just wanted to get to know them. Well, make that action step. Say, hey, can we make this a monthly thing? Can we make this a quarterly thing? And that could be your action step. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it's always appropriate, but you just got to craft it in a way that fits the setting and fits the conversation. So talking across differences. So I live in Oklahoma. I live in a southern state. I live in a very red state. So there's a lot of times where I have to talk across differences, and it can be hard. It can be really, really hard. But just remember that sometimes you can't expect to talk across the alley because then we're yelling at each other, right? Sometimes we have to guide folks over their differences using a bridge. And in that moment, you're going to have to be that bridge. Okay, because you are requesting the conversation and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you just have to lean into that discomfort. So when you come across differences, here are some phrases that you could use. So first, you need to agree. Okay, just let them have their conversation, and maybe it's not that big of a deal or that big of a disagreement, but you always want to allow folks to feel heard, right? So use phrases like, oh, that's interesting, or tell me more about why you think like that. And you don't have to say it in a way that is dismissive. Don't do that. Make sure that when you say that's interesting, or tell me more about that, make sure you're intentional about listening to what they're saying, because you never know what you'll hear. You may hear in their reasoning something that you can relate to, right? And so you want to make sure you're intentionally listening. You can even make a joke or ask a question, just dig it. At the end of the day, you're digging into their reasoning so that they feel more comfortable speaking to you. You don't want this elected official to feel as though you're just blowing off their opinion or disregarding anything that they are saying. They want to be a part of this. They are a part of this conversation as well. So next, you're going to have to be that bridge. Okay. So using phrases like listen, and then you're going to use phrases like, however, let me tell you about this. Or the thing to remember is that real people are being affected by this legislation, or real people are being affected by systemic racism, right? So now here's the kicker. Do not use the word but. Don't say I hear you, but because did you? You know, that makes them feel, did you hear me? We don't want to use the word but. Now, this is where it's going to get uncomfortable because you're pivoting, you're switching that conversation. But you have to lean into that discomfort and make it audible. Let them know that you're also uncomfortable, right? You can say this is difficult for me, but I'm going to continue nonetheless, and I need you to do the same, right? And then lastly, you're going to move into that persuasive mode. You're going to go straight to the talking points, but you're going to stay on message. Okay? Pivot. Okay? Your actions impact real lives. So we need to pivot this conversation. But the way you pivot the conversation from the bridge, this is the pivot happens between the bridge and the persuasive, okay? Or the persuasion. You're going to ease the discomfort and then you're going to pivot. So that easing the discomfort is the calming their fears, right? And then you're going to move to affirming what you heard. That's why in the beginning, you were supposed to be actively and intentionally listening so that you can affirm those shared values that you heard in their opinion and in their reasoning. Okay. And then lastly, you pivot to that message. You go straight to the talking points. Okay. Now they have been calmed. They know that you at least have some kind of common ground. Okay, maybe this person's reasonable. We can have a conversation. And then lastly, you're going to pivot. You have that open window to really talk about stating that problem. What are some best practices and tips? Now, I just dropped a couple. There's so many more, but I only dropped a couple here. So first, research your elected official before the meeting. I cannot stress this enough. You can Google Representative Smith. I don't know who that is. Representative Smith. You're going to Google Representative Smith and you're going to find out all about them. And it's going to tell you, because there's a chance that you might not be meeting with a legislator that represents you or an elected official that represents you. Maybe this is somebody who has the power to make change in an issue that is in a whole nother state, but you want to help out Oklahoma from Utah. You want to call the governor from Utah because you want to talk about an issue that they have to deal with. But before you get into that meeting, you want to make sure you research that person so you know what do they care about, what are their values, who do they represent, what do who are their mentors, what makes them listen, right? So make sure you're doing your research. Next, it's always best to schedule a meeting ahead. I said this before. If you happen to be around, it's also okay to drop in if you just happen, because it is an open office. Elected officials have open office policies, but sometimes they're just not there, or maybe they're busy and aren't available to speak with you at the moment. So it's always best to schedule a meeting ahead, whether it's a call or an in-person meeting. Just go ahead and do the formality. Always follow up with an email summarizing what you discussed. That way it's in writing. So when you go back for that quarterly meeting that you asked for, you can go back to that email and say, hey, Representative Smith, remember when we talked about student loan forgiveness? Okay, well, it's 4 months later, and I want to talk about a couple of things that I feel like we didn't dig deep enough into, and you can pull that up and show that to them. Or really just for record keeping. It's really helpful for legislators. They talk to so many people every day. It's helpful for them to have record of what they've talked about and who they've talked with. So just send that email. Make sure you do that. Don't be surprised, though, if you have to speak to a staff member. This is really common, especially in U.S. Senate seats or U.S. congressional members. They are really busy people. They're always traveling. They're almost never in their office. And they also almost never are available individually, like at them as a person, to speak with you. They might send a person who may represent them, or they may send a staff member to talk with them. But that staff member or that assistant is the gatekeeper. Don't feel like you're defeated because you didn't talk to the elected official. That person, be nice to them, y'all. Be nice, because they're the gatekeeper to this elected official. Now in the future, you can go back and say, hey, Leanne, remember when we had that conversation? I love talking to you, but I would love nothing more than to be able to talk with the legislator or with the elected official. And they have a say. They can move that calendar around to make room for you. They can put in a word because they're really close with the elected official. They can put in a word to the elected official and say, hey, Kanan was amazing with our conversation the other day. I just really think you should take the time to talk with them. They had an amazing point of view. They can speak good words on you, and then you can get that meeting later. So don't count them out. Lastly, I'll say it again, always end the conversation with a hard ask. So we're going to jump into telling your story. So we've moved on from the formalities, the meetings, and all of that, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper of how you can connect your story to this meeting with your elected official. But first, I want to say you don't owe an elected official your trauma. So only use your story if you want to, okay? Keep that in mind. So, but if you do want to use your story, let's go ahead and kick it off. So first, you're going to keep it short. Don't tell your life story, okay? You only have probably 30 minutes to an hour. You don't want to spend 15 to 20 minutes of it telling them about the dinner you made the other day, okay? Talk about what is relevant. Now, second, paint the picture. Make sure this person understands and has an information to be able to relate. You want to paint the picture of what it was like for you, how you felt to go through this story that you're telling. But I want to make sure you know that you should only share as much as you are willing to share. Again, you owe nobody your traumas. Okay. Third, you're going to go ahead and stay on topic. Okay. Again, a disciplined message. Stay on topic. Be sure that your story is relevant to the bill of the issue that you're talking about. That's again before writing out your ideas. Make sure that when you're deciding what story you're going to tell, it relates to the issue that you're going to be speaking about that day. Lastly, your story is your own. I want to reiterate this. Your story is your own. You are not obligated to tell your story or tell a story of yours that you're not ready to share. Use it if you want to. And don't worry, for those of you who feel like you may not have a story to share, and that's okay, because I have a solution. Don't make one up. Use this script that I have here for you, okay? This is an example script. So you would say, I'm here today because I value, insert your issue, and this blank is important to me because, and then you can go on and explain the reasons why it's important. And then you end it with that ask. Will you commit to voting yes on HB 1001? And go ahead and make that second ask. Go ahead and ask twice for two things. Why not? And put HB 1002 on the agenda for next week's committee meeting. So this is a way you can get, in this script, you can see that I shared my problem, I shared a solution, and I made that ask, all in, 2 sentences. It's really quick, really easy, okay? The hard ask. I've been talking about it a lot, and we finally come to the part where we get to learn about what the hard ask is, right? So we're going to talk about the hard ask, and we're going to talk about the soft ask. Let's go ahead and talk about the soft ask first. So I think I gave a good example earlier, but here's another one. Do you think that you can join us at our next advocacy day? I give that a complete thumbs down because here you're leaving room for things like, yeah, I gotta think about it. I might, I don't know, right? We don't want to leave that. So here's something better. Can I count on you to join our advocacy day at the Capitol at 10 a.m. on Tuesday? So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of new things here, right? So now instead of do you think, let's talk about that. Switch that to can I count on you? Okay. Now in the soft ask, something that was also missing was you didn't say when, you didn't say where. You have to give that information, okay? Because now they know when, they know where. There's no way they can say, oh, I wasn't sure what I don't know when the advocacy day was, right? So you're gonna say, can I count on you to join our advocacy day at the Capitol at 10 a.m. on Tuesday? You got it all in one sentence. I don't know how many letters that is, but it's definitely under 20, right? I mean, how many words it is, definitely under 20. So super easy, super quick. It's just about how you phrase your words to make sure that you are getting the point across and there's no room for question. Now, some do's and don'ts about making a hard ask. So let's go ahead and start with the do's. So do use strong action-oriented language to frame your question. Will you commit to do the research? Can I count on you to vote yes or no? Next is accountability is about follow through. So tell them that you're going to follow up with them. You know, you're going to be sending that email at the end of your meeting, but also if you ask them a question, if you ask them, can I count on you to join us at our advocacy day? No, they should know, and you should plan to follow up with them to send that calendar invite maybe 2 days before you say, hey, so excited to see you. That way they know that you are counting on them and are going to hold them accountable. Next, always restate the date, the day, the date, and the time in your ask. That's why we added the at the Capitol at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. And lastly, a little goes a long way. Right? So share how much work you put into an idea and how many others are also working on this project, because FOMO is real, right? Let them know that, hey, you know, I've been working on this advocacy day for so long. We've got like 50 volunteers signed up. They're so excited to go to the Capitol and talk about common sense gun safety, and they're going to tell legislators all about this, this, and this, and they're so excited. We've got speakers lined up, and all we're missing is you. Can I count on you to join us? We need you to join us. And they're going to feel like, oh, wow, this person really put in a lot of work. And now they're asking this of me. I probably should show up. I probably would look bad if I didn't. Okay. Now, what not to do? Do not leave the room. Do not leave room for the person to give any other answer besides yes or no. Okay. Because then you can hold them accountable to that. You can't leave them accountable to maybes or I think I can, right? You can't. That's not accountable. You cannot hold that language accountable. So yes or no. Do you think you will be able to look at my policy idea? That leaves room for excuses. Also avoid filling your silence. You know, you may make an ask and they just sit there and they're like just pondering. Let that happen. Let it be awkward. Allow for the person to think and make a decision for themselves, but don't fill the silence. Don't say, well, you know, it's at 10 a.m., but you could probably just come at 11:30, like just if you want to pop in for 30. Don't do that. No, let them sit, let them stew on it and make a decision as adults for themselves. And if they say no, don't worry, I have more to talk about. Then we're going to move into persuasive asks. Okay. So let's say they say no. Instead of saying, oh, you aren't interested, that's okay, I understand, and moving forward, ask them something else. Maybe the Tuesday at 10 a.m. doesn't work for them, and that's very possible, okay? Maybe they have something going on that day, they really can't join you. But I'm sure you have other opportunities that they could come join you and do something. And so you be prepared when you're preparing your talking points to have multiple asks, have multiple action items to ask of this elected official. So let's, for example, say, let's do this one right here. So a persuasive ask example would be, oh, you're not interested? Well, did you know that? Okay, let me back up. I want to make sure this is a little different question. So the first ask was asking them to support a bill that basically said you can't teach about race and gender in class. We have a bill like that in Oklahoma that recently passed, okay? So this persuasive ask would be pertaining to that bill. So your first ask was, can I count on you to vote no on passing HB 1775 because we need to talk about race and gender in schools? And they say no. Then you say, you're not interested? Well, did you know that not allowing race theory conversations in class would deny teachers that opportunity to teach about Native histories in Oklahoma? So you need to tie that back. You don't have to have a separate ask. It doesn't have to be separate from the original ask. You just dig in, and if they say no, you give more reasoning why they should say yes and ask again, okay? Do's and don'ts of being persuasive. So the do's are always have multiple asks prepared. When you're introducing an idea, make sure that you have thought through multiple avenues to reach your goal. Okay. And then don't settle. Do not settle. Make sure that when you're making a proper hard ask, that there's no room for no. And it's going to be awkward and it's going to be weird because you're going to come off as really pushy, but do your best to not accept no as an answer. Be prepared to have a persuasive ask, or to have that persuasive conversation, to use those bridge phrases that we used before, and remind them that we're leaning into a difficult conversation, that we have to come to a compromise, right? And be prepared to always make several asks. And that's all I have for you all today. I wanted to say that hard ask part for the end because I wanted you to really remember that is the most important part of your conversation with your elected official, making sure you ask that question and make that request properly. So again, my name is Jasmine. I've had so much fun with you all today. I hope that you enjoy this training. If you have questions, please do not hesitate. I dropped my email again. Email me. If you just want to talk to the training, I'm happy to do that as well. But please call me, beat me, whatever you need. And thank you so much.